VocalSynth2 by iZotope. So I'm going to try and cover as much as I can. Before we get started, if you're not subscribed to my channels, please subscribe. It means a lot to me. And of course, leave comments, like this video, and check out my channel for more tutorials and reviews. Let's get started. Before we get started, it is important to understand how VocalSynth works. VocalSynth relies on two input signals to process a vocal, the modulator and a carrier input. The modulator is the track that we put VocalSynth on. And a carrier, that's either an internal synth built into VocalSynth or an external synth. In addition to that, we can also control how VocalSynth works with a MIDI track. So let me show you the different modes, how they work, how they sound. VocalSynth can work in 3 different modes. Let's click the mode selection button, and we can see that we have Auto, MIDI, and Side-Chain. When we select Auto, the incoming signal serves as both the modulator and the carrier. VocalSynth listens to the incoming audio and detects pitch information based on range selected in the pitch control area. The pitch information it detects informs the notes played by the internal synth. In MIDI mode, just like in auto mode, the track that we put VocalSynth on, our vocal track, is the modulator, and the internal synth is the carrier. Only this time we can control the notes played with our MIDI keyboard or device. In sidechain mode, we can route external signals into the sidechain input of VocalSynth. That could be another synthesizer, virtual instrument, or any other source. In this mode, the modulator signal is the incoming audio from the track VocalSynth is inserted on, and the audio input from a configured sidechain source is treated as the carrier. Sidechain mode limitations. There are some limitations when using sidechain mode, and we'll talk about those later on in this tutorial. The general functions of VocalSynth are here in the middle section. We can see input pitch and voicing. We have a meter, XY control, and output section. The meter is a really cool way to visualize how VocalSynth works. Now it's also a mixer. So let's play our track and see what we can do with this meter. As you can see, when I click and pull those dots here, I can control the levels of the different modules. Now we can set another type of meter. Let's go to the settings. Select wave and play. Again, settings, select the meter, click OK. In the XY view, we can select 2 different parameters and control them with the pad node. So let's select something and see how that works. Now let's play our track. I'm frozen for you. As you can see, I've selected for X Talkbox level and Y is the Compuvox level. Let's select something else. The output section. Mix adjusts the balance between the processed and the unprocessed signals. Gate adjusts the gate threshold. The gate detection occurs on the input signal level, and gating is applied to the wet output signal before effects chain processing. Pan adjusts the stereo panning position of the output signal. Width adjusts the amount of stereo widening or narrowing effect applied to the output of VocalSynth. Level applies a clean gain offset amount to the output signal. Clip indicators appears when the output of the plugin is clipping. Pitch and voicing control tabs allows you to adjust the pitch detection and correction parameters. Register controls how VocalSynth2 detects and analyzes the incoming vocal data. There are 3 register settings to choose from: low, mid, and high. So what I suggest is you try them out, start with the mid and see what works best for your audios. Now level adjust the dry input or pitch correction signal level. Let's see how that works. We can enable or disable the pitch correction by clicking next to correction on the button. And we need to select one of 2 modes, key or custom. If we choose key, we select the scale from the drop down. It's either chromatic, major or minor. And we need to select the actual key. So for example, pitch correcting to C, minor. And we have speed and strength controls. So the speed determines how quickly your incoming vocal will be snapped to any particular note. Strength controls how closely the pitch correction will put your voice to the correct frequency. Selecting custom will allow us to create our own scales. So we'll just click to enable or disable notes. And now let's play. Voicing. In auto mode and MIDI mode, VocalSynth2 uses its internal synthesizer as the carrier, and here we can control 3 voices. We have the intervals and the levels. Let's see how that works. In MIDI mode, we can also select between mono, poly, and use the glide to change the portamento speed when transitioning from one note to another. And we'll see this later in the tutorial. We covered the general functions of VocalSynth2, and now we're ready to explore the different modules and effects. Biovox Module. These are tools to sculpt, format, tone, and the overall vocal aesthetics. And basically, we're trying to imitate the vocal tract properties. And so let's hear how that sounds, and then we'll cover all the controls. So of course we have the Enable Disable button. Clarity controls the amount of filter modulation applied to the signal. Shift alters the vocal tract length to effectively shift the format of the processed vocal higher or deeper. Nasal simulate changes to the soft palate to introduce more nasal quality to the processed signal. Breath mixes breathy, whisper-like character to the processed audio. And level controls the output level of Biovox Module. In auto and MIDI mode, Biovox uses the internal synth as a carrier, and here we can select the different presets. In the Advanced tab, we can actually control and create our own settings. In Biovox Advanced View, we have three sections: Vowel, the internal synth, and mix controls. The Vowel section contains a chart that allows us to impart the sound of a particular vowel to the processed signal by moving the node to different locations on the chart. The internal synth is available in auto and MIDI mode, and it is identical to all the modules that are using the internal synth. In this synth, we have two identical oscillators, oscillator 1 and oscillator 2. Let's go over all the controls of the oscillators. First of all, we have Enable Disable button, and we can select the wave shape from the drop-down. We have a gain control to adjust the gain of oscillator 1 and oscillator 2. We have pitch controls in semitones and cents, and we can apply some modulation on the pitch. The modulation is related to the LFO, and the LFO section is down here, and we'll get to this in a moment. We can also morph the wave shape with this shape button, and we can apply some LFO modulation on the shape with this mode control. In addition to the oscillators, we also have a noise section, and the noise section can be either controlled by LFO or the pitch. We also have crash and modulation. The LFO is a simple low-frequency oscillator, and we can select the different wave shapes from the drop-down. We have square, triangle, so up, sample and hold, and we have the rate from 0.1 to 20 Hz. Let's hear how the synth works. As you can hear, different settings for the oscillators will produce different results on the overall sound, as the carrier is based on this internal synth. The mix section includes a pan control, right and left, and a filter which allows us to filter out the lows and the high frequencies. The Vocoder Module. A vocoder relies on two signals, a carrier, which is usually a synthesizer, and a modulator, which is usually a voice. Here in VocalSynth2, the carrier will be the internal synth when we're using auto or MIDI mode, and an external sound source when we are using the sidechain mode. And the modulator will be the track that we put VocalSynth2 on as an insert, and that would normally be a vocal track. So what happens now is that both of these incoming signals are split into a number of frequency bands. The amplitude of the modulator signal in each of these bands is used to control the amplitude of the corresponding bands of the carrier signal, the synthesizer. And this has an auditory effect of mapping the frequency character of the modulator onto the carrier signal. And so, in short, we're taking the vocal character and applying it to our synthesizer. So let's hear it in action. Let's go over the controls of the vocoder. And first we have the mode. It goes between hard, vintage, and smooth. And the difference is the number of frequency bands used in both the modulator, which is the vocal track, and the carrier, which is the instrument. So it's either the internal synth that comes with VocalSynth2 or an external synth or instrument when using the sidechain mode. And so if we open the extended view here, the advanced view, we can see the number of bands changes as we change the mode. So smooth will be more of a early analog vocoder sound. Vintage will give us more analog sounding effect, and hard will be more of a modern type of vocoder. The shift control will alter the amount of frequency shift applied to each vocoder frequency band. And positive values will result in a brighter timbre, but may reduce the lower frequency presence in the process signal, while negative values result in a darker sound timbre, but may reduce the higher frequency presence in the process signal. Scale will adjust how quickly the vocoder responds to changing vowel sounds. Higher values may increase the articulation of the synthesized output, while lower values may give us a more softer sounding pad-style results. The level controls the output level of the vocoder module. In the advanced view, we have three sections: bands, synth, and mix. In the band section, we can control either the volume or the panning of each of the frequency bands. So what we see here is a display of bars for each frequency band control. And the currently selected view, it's either volume or pan, determines what the bars control. So the number of frequency bars displayed in the band's view is determined by the currently selected vocoder mode as shown before. So again, if I'm changing from hard, vintage to smooth, we'll see the number of bands changing. When we select volume, we can control the volume of the associated frequency band. If we choose pan, we can control the panning of each of the frequencies. So I can actually do something like this and send each of the frequency bands to different side of the stereo field. The synth section is identical to the one in Biovox, but let's go over it quickly. So we have two oscillators, a noise section. We can adjust the pitch for each of the oscillators separately, and we have a modulation control which is related to the LFO. In addition, we have a mix control here with panning and filtering. Let's try the vocoder. Compuvox Module. This module is based on technology known as linear predictive coding, LPC, and that was originally used for communication technology to encode speech at low bit rates and save bandwidth. Of course, nowadays we are using this technology to create sound effects and use it in electronic music production. So how does it work? The Compuvox module breaks down the vocal signal into two components. It estimates the formant alongside with the excitation, which is the buzz or noise created by the vocal fold, and then combine them together to create the effect. Let's go over the controls. Beats will add some noise to the signal. Bytes will allow you to artificially prolong vowel sounds, and bats will increase noise and vocal growl for a winged animal man effect, as the manual says. Compuvox has 3 different modes that represent multiple different flavors of the algorithm used. So we have spell, which is the most balanced. We have read, which is the strongest high order filtering mode. And we have math, which is the broadest setting. The level controls the output level of the Compuvox module. The advanced view. In the advanced view, we only have the synth and the mix sections. The synth is identical to the one explained in Biovox, but let's go over it quickly. So we have 2 oscillators with different wave shapes. We have a noise section, and we have some modulation options using the LFO. The mix section includes panning and filtering. Let's play with this module. The Talkbox effect emulates the effect of the hardware Talkbox effect, and it can take a synth or a guitar and just make it talk or make it sing. And the way it works is that in the real effect, we're taking a tube and we are singing or talking into that tube, and then that signal affects the signal or the output of the instrument. The Talkbox controls. Drive will increase the input gain into the Talkbox, and higher values will add crunchy distortion to your signal. Speaker adjusts the amount of Talkbox convolution applied to the signal, and this simulates the internal acoustics of the speaker compression driver that is typically sealed inside a hardware Talkbox pedal. Formant will adjust the amount of formant shift applied to the incoming signal. And the mode will be either dark, classic, or bright. So dark will be more of a bassy sound. Classic will be the default, and this is a classic Talkbox setting. And bright will offer an articulated high end that helps maximize the bite and articulation. Level, of course, will be controlling the output level of the Talkbox module. The Talkbox advanced view. Here we only have the synth and the mix sections. The synth is identical to all other modules, and it is explained in the Biovox module. Now, what we have here is two oscillators. We have pitch controls, modulations, a noise section, LFO, and in the mix section we have panning and filter. Let's hear Talkbox in action. The Polyvox Module. Polyvox is a voice generator that allows you to create vocal harmonies based on your vocal. Let's review the Polyvox controls. Formant transposes the vocal formant of the signal it produces. Character controls the relationship between the incoming vocal formant envelopes and how they are applied to the outgoing sound. Humanize varies time and pitch offset amount applied to the generated voices, and level controls the output level of Polyvox module. In the advanced view, we only have the mix section with panning and filter. Let's hear Polyvox in action. VocalSynth2 effects. In the bottom section of the plugin, you'll find 7 effects. They are Distort, Transform, Filter, Shred, Delay, Chorus, Ring Mode. All of the effects will have an on and off button and a mix control to mix between the dry and wet signal. You can rearrange them very easily. Just click and drag on the right top corner, and this will be the chain of effects from left to right. The chorus effect applies a short delay to the input signal and modulates the delay timing using LFO. The controls are depth to adjust the intensity of the LFO modulation, rate to adjust the speed of the LFO modulation, width to adjust the perceived stereo image of the processed output, and mix to mix between the dry and wet signal. Let's hear chorus effect. The delay effect needs no special introduction. What we have here is a sync button to sync with our host BPM, time control, which can be again either free or synced. We have feedback control to adjust the amount of the delay signal that is fed back into the input of the delay. And we have width to adjust the perceived stereo image of the process signal. Let's hear it in action. The Distort Effect. This effect adds great attitude and power to your vocal track. The Distort Effect utilizes wave shaper distortion and several different algorithms to affect your vocal. And the controls are drive to increase the amount of overdrive applied to the selected distortion type, tone applies filtering to the distorted signal, and type select between the different wave shapes. So we have warm, analog, edgy, and fuzz. Let's hear it. The filter effects offer 4 filters with adjustable resonance specially selected with vocal processing in mind. The controls are frequency to adjust the center frequency of the filter, res to adjust the amount emphasis applied to a narrow band of frequencies surrounding the center frequency of the filter, and type. We have 4 types, and the first one is NY New York Low Pass, which is a low pass filter. We have NY New York High Pass, which is a high pass filter. We have Scream, which is a very sharp resonance filter with lots of amplification around the center frequency for aggressive peaks and overdrive. And we have Combo, which combines both flat high pass and low pass filters. Let's hear it in action.
I'm frozen for you. When you walk around me so good. What I can do, you make me patient. I know that I'm not enabling, but I make frozen for you. When you walk around me so good. What I can do, you make me patient.
Ring modulation is an effect that multiplies the frequency's content of two input waveforms and outputs a new waveform that includes frequency's content from both the input sources and its own unique frequency content. The ring modulation is also well known for its metallic sound, and what we can also do here is create a tremolo effect by setting the frequency control to lower values. The ring modulation controls include frequency to adjust the timing of frequency modulation, and we can sync this to our host. Let's see how that works. When we click the enable or disable host tempo, our LFO and depth controls are disabled. The LFO adjusts the rate of triangle wave LFO modulation. Depth adjusts the intensity of the triangle wave LFO modulation. And mix adjusts the balance between the dry and wet signals. Let's hear ring modulation in action.
What I can do, you make me patient. I know that I'm not enabling, but I make you feel high. I'm frozen for you. When you walk around me so good. What I can do, you make me patient. I know that I'm not enabling, but I make you feel high. I'm frozen for you.
The shred effect takes chunks of audio and repeats them. The captured audio can be repeated at 3 different rates. Each step has its own repeat rate. The rate and the capture length values are always synced to the tempo of your session. Shred also allows you to choose from a number of sequence rhythms to vary the musical timing of switching between the different steps. The shred effect controls includes length to set how often shred captures new buffer of audio to repeat. The value is synced to the timing of your session and presented in musical note units. Sec or sequence determines the rhythm sequence used to switch between the different steps. There are 16 different rhythms sequences to choose from. Step repeat rate sets how often the captured audio is repeated from the currently selected step when it is triggered by the sequencer. Each step has an independent repeat rate settings. The step activity lights, these circles directly above each step labeled A, B, and C, turn white when the associated step is triggered to repeat. And we have the mix to mix between the wet and the dry signal. Let's listen to shred.
When you walk around me, patient. I know that I'm not enabling, but I make you feel high. I'm frozen for you. When you walk around me so good. What I can do, you make me patient. I know that I'm not enabling, but I make you feel high. I'm frozen for you. When you walk around me so good. What I can do, you make me patient.
Transform is a modeling effect of guitar cabinets, speakers, and other devices we can run our vocal track through to get special effects. You can choose between different types of impulse responses, and their description is in the user manual. And we also have width control to adjust the amount of stereo widening or narrowing effect that is blended into the transformed audio. Of course, we have the mix control to mix between the dry and wet signal. Let's hear it in action.
I know that I'm not enabling, but I make you feel high, 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 yeah. I'm frozen for you. When you walk around me so good, what I can do, you make me patient. I know that I'm not enabling, but I make you feel high, 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 yeah. I'm frozen for you.
VocalSynth includes an internal synth and an engine that analyzes the vocal track and works its magic on it. But if we want to have VocalSynth to be controlled by a MIDI controller or a MIDI track to match our song, we need to connect a new track to the track that is running VocalSynth. Let me show you how to do that, and then we'll do a quick demo. We'll select the MIDI mode and click Accept. As you can see, we have some instructions here. These are specific to the host that we are running. So in my case, this is Cubase, but if you're running some other program, you'll see instructions that match your program. Now we're all set. So I'm going to create a new MIDI track, and we'll call it Vocal MIDI, for example. And now let's connect that MIDI track to our vocal track here. So going to the output and select vocal. It's already selected, but if it's not, select it from the drop-down menu here. Now we're all set and ready to play. So I'm going to start the song.
I know that I'm not enabling, but I make you feel high, high, high. I'm frozen for you. When you walk around me so good, what I can do, you make me patient. I know that I'm not enabling, but I make you feel high, high, high. I'm frozen for you. When you walk around me so good, what I can do, you make me patient. I know that.
In VocalSynth2, in auto or MIDI mode, we have our internal synth as the carrier, and that's the sound source that is carrying the vocal track or the vocal manipulations. But if we want to have an external synth or instrument or an audio track to be the carrier, we need to connect and have VocalSynth in sidechain mode. Let me show you how that's done. So first, let's select the sidechain mode, and we have some instructions that match our host. In my case, that's Cubase. And now let's engage the sidechain here in Cubase, and we'll select our synth as the sidechain input. And now we are all set. So right now, if I'll play the song, let's hear how it sounds. And now I'll play the synth. Now, if we just play the synth without anything else, that's how it sounds. Just a very lush and very mellow pad sound. But this is going to be the carrier of the vocal track. So let's hear it again. Now you can notice that in the sidechain mode, Polyvox is not available. And this is because Polyvox uses the internal synth, and this is not, of course, available when we're having our external synth or external sidechain input connected to VocalSynth. In conclusion, VocalSynth2 is really a great vocal plugin and effect. It has so many features, so many modules that you have to experiment and try out and see what works for you, what doesn't work for you. And I think what is really fun about it is that you have all these options, all these presets that are available for you to try out. So I'll see you in the next videos, but before we end, if you're not subscribed to my channel, please consider subscribing, because I have many videos and many tutorials on plugins, synthesizers, and music. And that's it. So I'll see you in the next videos.